Welcome to Dicejunkies. I'm Zeno Damus here with
Q.
And we also have
Blood.
And we're going to talk about some Mandalorian. So season 2 of Mandalorian has started. They're about 3 episodes in. Me and Q finally caught up with Blood Axe. So we thought we'd sit back, sort of give some talk about this, and give you our opinions. Now there will be spoilers in this. We're not holding back, so you have been warned. But yeah, it's hard to fully give a good opinion on the whole show without releasing some spoilers here. So let's get started. Let's talk about Mandalorian.
So as y'all know, I'm the Star Wars-aholic of the group. I take a really probably unhealthily deep dive into it, as opposed to the casual fanship of Q and Zeno. The first episode, which is chapter 9 of, which they actually continue the chaptering from the first season, so it's not season 2, episode 1, it's chapter 9, but for all intents and purposes, we'll just call it episode 1 of season 2, was the Marshal. So with the end of season 1, we all know that the Mandalorian is looking for others of his kind to try to help him find the Jedi, which he's been tasked with returning the child, aka Baby Yoda, back to the sorcerer wizards, the Jedi. So after a very cool James Bondy type sequence, he finds where there's a Mandalorian supposedly on Tatooine. Which everyone immediately goes, oh, it's Boba Fett, including me. That's kind of what I thought too. But when the Marshal walks in, clearly the body style, the way the armor's being worn, it's not Boba Fett. And this is kind of where some of the old legends, myths come into. Okay, the Sarlacc basically ate Boba Fett, spit out the armor, Jawas picked it up, and someone bought off the Jawas, which is basically what the story was I bought it off Jawas as I was dying in the desert. So that part I was fine with. Doomcock said it best to where this episode was pretty safe, and it was. There was not a whole lot of going out on a limb, but we did get to see something that we've all been wanting to see in live action for years, which is the Krayt Dragon. I know in Star Wars or Knights of the Old Republic, we had to fight Krayt Dragons, and we found pearls, and we sold them as to get currency and stuff. But again, it was the same old guy walks into town, the Marshal needs help, the hero goes and helps him, and in exchange he gets some information or gets some equipment or whatever. So it is pretty safe.
I mean, it even is a classic story. I mean, no, just think about it, because it's the town with the Marshal, and it's the natives that raid them. If you look at it, man, it's cowboys and Indians.
Well, no, and that's sort of been the theme with, I think, Mandalorian quite a bit, is that the whole
like, this is a real Western.
Yeah.
You got it.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, this is Old West.
The issue I have with this episode is twofold. Number one is the fact that the Mandalorian speaks Tusken Raider. I mean, verbally speaks their language, which it's almost like Han Solo speaking Wookiee in Solo movie. It doesn't make sense. That doesn't happen in the other movies. So I don't like the whole Disney thing of letting people speak the languages of other races that they normally have traditionally not spoken.
At least he didn't speak frog.
No, but that happens in episode 2, which we'll get to that here in a little bit. So that's one of the issues I have with this is the passive ability or the passiveness of the Tusken Raiders to basically just, become traitors now and whatever. But the other big thing is at the very end, and I don't know if y'all caught this, was Tamora Morrison standing on the sand dunes. And do y'all remember who Tamora Morrison was?
Nope.
He was Jango Fett. And what was Boba? An exact clone of Jango Fett. So if Jango Fett, an exact duplicate of him, is walking on the sun dunes on Tatooine, that's insinuating that either A, it's one of the other clones like Rex or Cody, or Thyre, but more likely it's probably Boba Fett saved the
Fett.
Sarlacc pit, crawled out, and now he's walking around Tatooine not wearing the armor anymore.
I said that to Bud Axe when I first saw. I mean, I said I think that's Boba Fett. Remember I said that? I said I think that's Boba Fett, but because he was scarred up, I said I think that's the Boba Fett, but he's not got the armor. Maybe he's lying low. He may have lost his armor or actively allowed his armor to be returned. Because when he's looking at it, it's also the armor's now in the hands of a Mandalorian again. So he may have just been like, but it was cool.
If you look at it closely, Tamora Morrison has two pieces of equipment. Now, you can't see what he's wearing because it's so dark, but he has two pieces of equipment. One's a bantha stick, and the other is a Tusken sniper rifle. So my theory is that he actually has been hiding out with the Tuskens, but actually wearing full Tusken garb. He was probably part of the whole scene anyway, fighting the Krayt Dragon.
It's possible.
That's what I think. But again, it was so dark you couldn't see. Was he wearing light clothes, dark clothes? I couldn't make out the breather mask that the Tuskens wear, if he had that with him or not. But he definitely had the bantha stick, and he had the sniper rifle that they like to carry around as equipment.
True.
So I think he was probably with them as a member of their tribe, so to speak. But we haven't quite found out yet. So I fully expected episode 2 to roll right into a follow-up with him confronting the Mandalorian and they going into a really good fight sequence. But that didn't happen. So before we jump into chapter 10, did y'all have anything y'all wanted to add to the first episode?
I mean, like you had mentioned with the way the story went, I enjoy that story type. That Mandalorian, they've been doing it since season 1. I felt like this fell right into place, as a continuation of the chapters previously aired. It didn't feel like they were trying to push anything different. It seemed to be the show that I really enjoyed previously, and that's I think that's why I was surprised to hear that some people had complained a lot about this episode. Of course, I'm not as big into the Star Wars lore, so I didn't catch a lot of the intricacies that you had caught. But as just a good story and a good episode, I rated this first one pretty highly.
Yeah, the reason I have an issue with bringing in Boba Fett specifically is you're taking the focus off the main character. Give us another villain. Give us first season you had Cara Dune, you had Quill, even Grief Karga at the end. He surrounded himself by people that were completely new to us, pretty well fleshed out characters as far as their motivations go, as far as their personalities. And so you kind of bought into it that the Mandalorian was kind of the big picture, although Baby Yoda still some of the limelight, which they did a good job in so far in this season as far as him not taking away a lot of the story. He's been kind of
it's been comic relief,
side character, so to speak. But I'm really concerned about the Boba Fett piece. And as we find out in chapter 3, another character that really is super popular and I think will take away from the smallness of the story. I don't want to go global and bring in all these legacy characters. I want to keep it nice and refined on basically the lone wolf and his sidekick or Padawan or whatever you want to call it. I want to keep it focused on that, but they're spreading it to Boba Fett and they're adding in these other characters from the Clone Wars or from the prequels, then I may have a problem with. Now, if you introduce them temporarily, like 1 or 2 episodes, and then they do their own series, okay, I can drink that Kool-Aid. Mm-hmm. But I don't want to take away too much from this story because I did enjoy season 1 so much. I'm kind of concerned that they're going to go, okay, how do we keep the suspense going? Oh, let's bring in Boba Fett.
Yeah, I do agree that I don't want the show to stretch out too far. I don't want it to reach out to all this other stuff. I like the show as it is, sort of an isolated part of the Star Wars universe.
Yeah, me too.
All right, so season 2.
I mean, the last thing I'll say is that maybe they're not going to bring Boba Fett back in to the Mandalorian, but instead they're trying to do yet another offshoot series that follows Boba Fett. Because I could have sworn at some point I thought Disney was talking about that.
Well, and that has been a rumor for several characters that have shown up that Disney may be using the Mandalorian, since it's one of the few shows that are doing well, as a launcher for other series.
I just wanted to throw that out there. You know me and my theories. They may have been going, hey, just like we had Old Man Logan, it's going to be like Old Man Boba Fett, launch side series. Because, I mean, he looks a lot older because they use the actor. So, I mean, it would be interesting to see this older, grizzled Boba Fett.
I would rather see younger Boba Fett. I'd rather see how he became to be the feared bounty hunter that he was in Return of the Jedi, or even in Empire Strikes Back.
That would conflict too much with the Mandalorian as a bounty hunter.
Well, I mean, he was one of the most feared bounty hunters in the galaxy. So I would love to see how he got to that prominence, even if it's the lone wolf stories that we're seeing in the Mandalorian. What cool adventures did he go on? How did he develop that type of reputation? Or if he wanted to go through, his hunting down the Jedi because the Jedi killed his father. That would be an interesting way to bring in Force users as he's going after the strays after Order 66. But there have been discussions of the Mandalorian, of the Boba Fett movie years ago that got shelved. Which a lot of people think that some of the Mandalorian series is actually coming from some of those concepts. But I still think that there's enough meat on that bone to maybe even do a Boba Fett series, which I'm all for. And having Tamora Morrison play Boba Fett is even just, more gravy on top of the steak, because he is Jango Fett, the actor played Jango Fett, so therefore he'd be the perfect Boba Fett because he looks exactly like him, albeit 20 years older, which is exactly where he needs to be. So, again, I would be all for that, but I don't want to see too much focus or too long of a exposure of Boba Fett on the Mandalorian series.
All right. So, season chapter 10.
All right, The Passenger. And this is my least favorite, probably out of all 10 episodes, because it just seems to be filler, in my opinion. I don't know what y'all think, but basically The Passenger is an immediate follow-up to Chapter 9, where when he gets back with, spoiler alert, Boba Fett's armor in tow, that he ends up, again, asking where can he find information on people that look like him. And so the passenger, the frog lady, basically says, you take me in my vat of eggs to my husband, then he's actually seen them. He knows where they are. They're actually where he's at. Only thing is, you can't go above sublight speed because it'll actually destroy the eggs going to hyperspace. So it's a long, drawn out, slow moving beginning. At which point they get pulled over by X-Wing fighters who basically look like buddy cops, which is just hilarious because Dave Filoni is one of the X-Wing pilots which we saw in in the Prisoner, which is Chapter 6 from Season 1. And he has more of a prominent role in this one, actually more lines. But the whole thing basically breaks down when they ask him, were you part of this prison break that actually killed what's the guy's name? It's not. I can't remember the character's name, but basically it was the only living person on the ship. Which, unfortunately, the Twi'lek did kill their buddy, so to speak. And they go into a chase scene in which he crashes the Razor Crest, and as he's trying to fix it, Frog Lady ends up slipping off into these hot springs, at which point draws all these giant monstrous spiders to attack them, and they're once again saved by the X-Wing fighters, who basically say, we basically have confirmed that you were there. We also saw video evidence of you trying to save our friend, so we're going to cut you a break. and then they fly off. Again, very weak in my opinion. I think the best part of it was on the edge of my seat trying to figure out how many of the eggs Baby Yoda was going to eat. Because every time you look around, he's not there. Where's the kid? And he slept off, and he's getting his little rubber paws into the container, pulling out
see on screen eggs. 3.
Do what, Q?
You see on screen 3.
Is that including the one he pulled out of his pocket?
Yes.
I recall more than 3. I'm thinking.
So he did one when he got caught by the Mandalorian. He did another one in there somewhere.
See, I thought he did 2 then.
No, it was always saw 1, and then he did another one later, and then he got a third one at the end.
Yeah, he got another one later when after they crashed the ship and he was going and looking for the eggs. He had gotten one then.
Yeah, and I was just like, dude. Because he did the first time he got caught, then he went and got another one, and then and I ain't gonna lie, by about the third one, I was getting annoyed, just because I was like, he's told him not to do it.
The joke was getting old at that point.
Yeah, the joke was old. The first time was a shocker and was funny. The last one was kind of funny, but also you're starting to look and go all right, man, you're being told not to do this, and we know the child is not completely unaware. The child's shown signs of being more aware. Yeah, I think that's the second one. That's the second one, yeah.
And she knows how many eggs she has in that vat, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, so it's getting into an issue by about the third one, and I'm just like, okay.
She starts going off on him in frog language.
Robot,
before the robot, she looks at the thing and then starts going off on him about it.
She's going off on him because he's not wanting to move quickly. He's wanting to leave the next day.
Well, that's when she gets translated. But at the time, I think she acted like there was something wrong.
It looked like she had suspected something was wrong with the egg count before then.
Yeah, but I don't think that was the issue, because I think she would have actually started off with that when she got the droid to work, as opposed to keep your pet off my kids versus no, this can't wait until tomorrow. We have to go now.
Well, I doubt that she suspected the Baby Yoda anyway.
She probably thought they were damaged in transit.
Otherwise, I don't think she would have taken care of him in the next.
Yeah, the next
chapter,
episode implies that they never figured out what he was doing.
Well, they were only in the cockpit because of the damage to the ship. They didn't have anywhere else to go.
Yeah, so. But I mean, it was a gag. I mean, some people freaked out. I think they overreacted. But I will say that like I said, like Zeno, after the first one, it started to be a joke that wasn't as funny, because you're like, you need to stop that. Yeah. Like the Mandalorian, because I started looking at the Mandalorian and be like, dude, you need to keep him away from the eggs.
You could have left it. You could have left it with the first one. The couple of times where he was like, sort of reached out and the Mandalorian slapped him away. And then you could have thrown in the last one, the pocket one, for a shocker.
Yeah. One more. But all the ones in the middle and the tips in the middle, yeah. Plus, I'm like, after she noticed the egg count is off, why can he still get in this? You telling me this thing doesn't lock? That's dumb on a really high level. That was
another thing that got me, dude. When they went to go crash, it just goes flying all over the place. And it's like, well, you're telling me you didn't strap this precious cargo, the eggs, down when you flew out?
I mean, they can't handle hyperspeed. They should be. That implies there's a fragility to it. So, I mean, but it was a filler episode. I could put it like this. You could skip this whole episode. And literally, you probably should, because he doesn't get any eggs after this episode. And you'll probably avoid the whole argument.
Yeah.
Well, I think the reason there was so much comedy and jokes in it is that it was directed by Peyton Reed, who did Ant-Man 1 and 2. And Ant-Man was probably the silliest out of all the Marvel movies.
That's why it felt so different. Okay, that makes sense, because it felt different than the other episodes. That explains it. Honestly, my final statement is you can skip episode 2. You'll miss very little.
Yeah. I'm going to say I still enjoyed the episode, even though some of the jokes fell short. I will bring up the spider was creepy, man.
Oh, yeah. Now, the spider was really well done. I'll admit you'll miss some great special effects. But the entire flight sequence where they got beside him and they're questioning him went on too long to me. Like
which also came off really corny as well with the conversation there.
It went too long.
It was definitely a heavy comedy episode, and like you said, it was obviously a filler. But with who directed it now, it actually makes a little more sense.
Well, there's two things that still may make it something that you would want to watch. Number one, the damage to the Razor Crest. If you go from 1 to 3, how the hell did this thing happen? I mean, if you can live with that, then that's fine. But I mean, that's going to be a constant for the next several episodes until he has a chance to repair his ship.
Well, I'm not with Q on the whole skip it thing. I'm just saying it was not the best of the 3 episodes by far.
Oh, there's nothing vital in it unless something happens with those X-Wing pilots later on.
Well, I'll put it like this. You can skip the first half of it because, honestly, everything important that happens is when they get to this scene. Really,
my suggestion is if you got something to do, you don't have to feel bad if you miss parts of this episode.
Yeah, you don't have to pay attention. You can definitely do background noise.
Do some laundry and...
But the fact that they brought in Trapper Wolf and a new X-Wing pilot, and they kept bringing up the prisoners that he left trapped on the prison ship, I think we'll probably see those 3 again. At some point.
Well, and I do enjoy that they're not forgetting the past, though. Mm-hmm. You know, like the past episodes are sort of linking in. You know, it's slight, it's in the background,
continuity,
but the world is still. Exist, and things that happen have consequences. I like that.
Mm-hmm. Well, let's go on to episode 3.
Yeah.
All right, chapter 11. So this one, I think we all 3 really enjoyed the most out of everything for season 2. Although Q and I will have difference of opinion when we get to this one to Bo-Katan here in a second. So we'll have an interesting discussion. But again, following the trail of the Frog Lady. She does pay off, and her husband does help her help the Mandalorian find information as far as where the other Mandalorians are located. So after a very predictable sequence on a ship where these Kenari are trying to, quote unquote, take the Mandalorian's armor because apparently Beskar is still crazy expensive no matter which planet that you're on, which actually is a pretty interesting sequence why he was actually so gullible as far as letting the child get that close to the pit for something that they said would be exciting to watch them feed. And so just to give you a mental picture of what it is on this ship, there's this giant cargo hold filled with water. And they have this gigantic net filled of fish they've been catching while they've been traveling since port. And they said, you want to watch this thing eat? And I can't remember what the monster is called, but basically it kind of resembles the creature from, oh gosh, what was that movie? I can't remember now. It's
a giant water leech with fangs. We've seen this type of monster a dozen times.
It's the one with had Treat Williams in it and Famke Janssen. I'm drawing a blank on it now. Anyway, so in a way to basically distract him, they knock the child off into the water, which the monster decides to go ahead and eat the whole pram that's in, and then they knock him in there, so he's trapped, drowning in water. They're beating him down with tridents and spears. And the next thing you know, these Mandalorians come flying in, 3 of them, and basically slaughter the whole crew. Get him out. And this is where, again, they're bringing back in Clone Wars era characters of Bo-Katan from House Kryze.
Yeah. Now, before we get into these 3 Mandalorians, I will say, like you said, up to this point, the episode was like you said, him getting tricked and all that stuff. It was obviously to introduce these 3 characters. They sort of played a little loose to get to this point. And but once I got here, I think this is where this episode really started getting interesting.
Indeed.
It got interesting. At first, it kind of took a backwards turn, but I think once they got to their objective, then it really became Star Wars again. But yeah, and the first thing that happens once they fight off all the Kenari is basically the head Mandalorian takes off her helmet. At which point, same
All
thing
of
in
them
the
take it
first
off.
episode,
Mhm.
Mandalorian freaks out. Well, you're not Mandalorian. Where'd you get that armor? And actually, it's Bo-Katan from House Kryze. She was born on Mandalore, so she is more Mandalorian than him. And that's when we realize, based on their conversation, that he's following a quote unquote old ways, more of a religious faction, as opposed to how their Mandalorian family follows the Mandalorians. So they have a backwards and back and forth, and he leaves. At which point, they hunt him down and basically see him in another fight for his life, because the Kenari that was on the ship was a brother of another gang who was basically trying to kill because he killed his brother. And he's bailed out again by the three Mandalorians, and they sit down and talk over a drink. At which point, we realize that they're trying to retrieve weapon artifacts or weapons in general that the Empire's been smuggling off the planet, and they're trying to take back Mandalore. So again, you're going down that path of the Clone Wars yet again, bringing in another character from that time period, going back to Mandalore, which I think was pretty fleshed out in the series, albeit not necessarily on screen. But if you follow the Star Wars franchise, I'm sure you've seen the Clone Wars. And bringing back another legacy character in Bo-Katan, which I don't think will be a major player in The Mandalorian. But the fact that we find out that she's after the Dark Saber, which we know Moff Gideon has now become in possession of, she's probably going to show up again. So once she pitches her idea to the Mandalorian of, okay, I'll help you find what you're looking for, but you got to help us do this job, and we're going to go raid this Imperial ship, so we can get these weapons, and we need these so we can actually go back and take Mandalore back. And he's like, okay, well, how many are we talking about? Well, there's about a squad on the ship. He's like, okay, we can deal with that. So it goes through a very interesting fight sequence with stormtroopers, which is cool. I mean, again, it's Star Wars. They can't hit the right side of a barn. And they go through, and they have some pretty interesting strategies as far as how they're dealing with some of the really stupid Imperial soldiers, especially when they open up the hatch, which is absolutely hilarious.
I will say this was a thing that did shock me a little bit, because like you said, the start. So with the start, you had them constantly, I guess, jumping in and saving the Mandalorian. Where once they get on the ship, I mean, the Mando really shines there. You know, he kicks some butt. And
right, he can't fight Kenari, but he can take down a whole squad of droids on a New Republic prison ship.
Yeah. So yeah,
they downgraded him to make Bo-Katan and the other Mandalorians look super badass. I mean, they kill everything with like insane ease, while this episode, his competency definitely feels like it was strongly downgraded.
But I mean, once they got on the ship, his competency went up
a bit. But I mean,
oh no, it went up pretty hardcore when he got in the ship. But it's just fighting the squid guys. He looked like as an absolute tool.
I know.
Well,
man.
Granted, the first one they tricked him into a situation where he couldn't really fight, and the second one, he was wolf packed, and so to speak. But still, I mean, he's done better under worse situations that we've seen in season one.
By far. I mean, you compare it to the first episode when he took out the crate dragon.
But I mean, this episode does sort of go back to one of those old Western type things with the heist. You know, this is basically your heist episode.
Well, this is where the contradictions between me and Blood Axe started to come in too, because basically they turns out that the goal was not to get the weapons, but was to take the whole ship. And basically a recurring theme is that she basically lied to him. Like Bo-Katan lied to like the Mandalorian what she wanted to do. He's like, you told me I help you get the weapons, and she basically, and he even hits the line, you changed the deal. And you know, she even hits a like a "this is the way" smart-ass line, like mocking the Mandalorian code. So I disliked Bo-Katan I mean, but she's a badass. She's a Mandalorian, but I dislike her. I don't see her as much of a true Mandalorian as the Mandalorian himself. And me and Blood Axe had a rather heated debate on who's the real Mandalorian here. Go ahead, Blood Axe. I believe you had your say.
Well, like there's a difference between the Mandalorian creed religion that he follows, which is what we were led to believe that all the Mandalorians were dead in season 1. Well, no, we found out now that actually real Mandalorians are still alive. They were born and raised on Mandalore, versus what he follows and thinks that Mandalorians are supposed to behave this way. Which that leads the question: did the armorer not explain that there are different factions of Mandalorians before the fall? Or did they not? We're not aware that anyone survived the purge from the Empire. So she is more Mandalorian than he is, just by blood, by birth. But the thing about Bo-Katan, if you ever watched the Clone Wars TV series, this is Bo-Katan. Her main focus is to basically get back to prominency and take over the title of Mandalore again, which she was back in the series. She doesn't care about him or his mission or his objectives. She's after what she thinks is her birthright, which is return back as the head of Mandalore before Darth Maul took over. Again, spoiler if you haven't watched the Clone Wars series. And she was just as ruthless then as she was in this episode. But from a lore perspective, she did make mention that he follows the old ways, which leads us to believe that a faction or a house of Mandalorians splintered off and started practicing some of the old religious aspects of Mandalore in order to regain their focus, because what the Empire did to Mandalore and the fracture of the planet was absolutely nuts. So they were driven to a point of almost extinction. So they're trying to survive, and he was brought up under that creed. Mm-hmm. Not that he wasn't born on Mandalore, but he's claiming to be Mandalorian based on his religious preferences.
And that's where we had a conflict, because basically, as you've heard, Blacks is pushing the whole, well, they were born on Mandalore, so that makes them more Mandalorian. And I'm like, yeah, but if you don't practice your people's, culture, if you've switched off it, because to me, like, okay, I've always thought of the Mandalorians as having this code, this creed they went by, these practices. And if you're not doing that, then, the Mandalorian is more to me than just genetics. I mean, it's the same thing like, look, I'm not African. I may have African descendancy, but I'm a black American. I'm not African. I don't speak African. I don't, wear a dashiki. I don't do those practices. So I don't consider myself to be like a hardcore, I'm a pure blood, or I'm an African. It's like they don't practice the Mandalorian. I mean, she basically lies to a Mandalorian and tricks him. That really just lost me, because I'm like, no, this is the deal, the code, because they even make a big deal out of it in the second episode. They bring up the code in the second episode. The Frog Lady's like, I've always heard about the Mandalorian code. And you could tell that's supposed to be a big deal, a big part of the Mandalorians. And then you meet somebody who's literally mocking the code.
And it's not just the Frog Lady on that. I mean, even in the first episode with the guy with the Mandalorian, he knew as soon as the Mandalorian said, "Oh crap, you're a real Mandalorian," like you didn't take off. Oh yeah,
yeah.
When he asked him for a drink, and immediately when he was like, "Oh crap," he didn't take off his helmet. He's not one.
He's like, "Oops, you didn't take off your helmet. You're a real." So even other people see him as more of a Mandalorian. So the whole, well, she was born on Mandalore, yeah, but she doesn't give a flip. I mean, dude, they look smug. I mean, did that bother you? They look so smug when they found out, oh, he does like the whole helmet thing. And I'm like, okay, it'd be different if they just said, oh, okay, you practice this. But they're almost like, we don't care about honor and the Mandalorian. And I don't want the new Mandalorian to be a person who doesn't care about the Mandalorian code.
Well, yeah.
That's a bad choice to have the new Mandalore be somebody who isn't going to be good at being being Mandalore, because she doesn't care about it. She'll do anything. I mean, hey, that's cool. Yeah, I'd get that kind of character. But rating her as a Mandalorian, she gets a low rating from me. Rating her as a character, she's a badass.
So let me ask you this, Quinn. Real life scenario. Mm-hmm. So you're Christian, right?
I don't think we should probably use religion as an example.
Well, then I mean, it actually fits here, though.
Okay, well, if y'all feel comfortable with this,
Mandalorian, you're a Christian, right?
yes.
Do you do confessional every week?
That's not a part of my Christian beliefs.
But it's Catholicism.
Yes.
So the Catholics believe that's what you are supposed to do.
Mm-hmm.
You're supposed to go to confessional, and you're supposed to confess your sins and ask for forgiveness.
Mm-hmm.
I don't believe that. You don't believe that. Does that make us less Christian than Catholics?
It makes us less Catholic.
I honestly
But
thought,
that's the thing, though. We wouldn't be considered to be true Catholics.
I honestly thought you were going a different direction with this because there is a simpler comparison. You realize America,
we're all Christians, right?
Like, that's not a good comparison. If you were to go more about, like...
Hang on. I'm not done. I'm asking. We're all Christians. Catholics, Protestants, Presbyterians, we're all Christians, right?
Yes.
So on Mandalore, there was House Wren, there was House Vizsla, there was House Kryze. So you have these different factions, they're all Mandalorian, that practice and believe different ways. He's part of the Watch. So his splinter faction, the Watch, believes in the old ways. Things that House Wren and House Vizsla and House Kryze don't believe in. That don't make them any less Mandalorian. They just believe differently. So therefore, I think it's a very valid comparison. Just because we don't go and we don't do mass, or we don't do go and do confessional, or we don't do some of the other things that the other religions and Christianity do, doesn't make anything less Christian.
Isn't Catholicism just another option? I don't think it's the old way.
Doesn't make her any less Mandalorian just because she takes off her helmet, because she's in a different faction of Mandalorians.
All right. I prefer the Watch then. I think they're better.
Well, and that leads one to question, is that the descendants of the Death Watch, or just a whole new faction? I don't know.
I mean, and in my defense, the whole show is based around my opinion, because literally the whole reason he's trying to do this for the child is the code. Like, this entire series, regardless of your sentiment, is friendlier toward the code because it's the entire focus of the series. The don't want to take his helmet off, but it would happen to be a droid. So, if nothing else, this series is about the code. It's about the Watch version of the Mandalorian.
Well, yeah, I don't mind them. I don't mind them introducing different shoots that don't have the code. Now, whether or not you want those to be the people controlling Mandalore, like you said, that's concerning. But I mean, as far as introducing a different offshoot of Mandalorians,
Oh, no, it's fine for it to exist. It's just like I said, honestly, too, what rankles me not as much as the helmets was the deal and their attitude toward it. Had she been just a little bit more respectful, at least, to his beliefs, and she didn't try to screw him over on a deal, had she said, hey, you know what? I think we could take the ship. I know we said we'd do this, but I think we could take this ship. But her attitude made me go, you can't trust her. She's not trustworthy. She would betray her own allies to get what she wants.
I mean, the other thing.
I said it makes me, so you can't say I'm wrong because I said it makes me feel that way.
No, House Kryze, House Vizsla. Oh, I fully expect them to do that. House Wren, completely different story. They're a little bit more honorable and a little bit more palatable than those houses are. So it also depends upon the house you're dealing with, as far as how they're going to treat you, respect wise or honor wise. So
I'm drawn to honorable people.
Her character is ruthless. She doesn't care who gets hurt in the way, as long as she accomplishes her goals. And the way she treated him, I wouldn't expect him to actually be an ally. If anything, he may actually turn out to be someone who opposes her ability to even assume the throne of Mandalore at some point.
I would like to see that.
Season 4. Now, that would be really interesting, but I really want to kind of divorce ourselves away from the whole Mandalorian planets aspect, because that was been fleshed out so much in the Clone Wars. Let's follow, the gunslinger. Let's follow his adventures, and let's let that happen either in a film or another series that's not included with this one. Because the whole lone gunslinger walking into town, taking on an adventure, and then moving on to the next adventure more episodically is more interesting to me than going back to Mandalore again.
I do also hope they're not going to do this where some series do this where their main character meets every important person to ever exist. I mean, Ahsoka Tano is who he's supposed to be going to look for. And at this point, I'm just like, okay, is he going to meet everybody? Like, is this going to be every week? Is this going to be Batman and Friends where every episode it's meet another character from the series? That also takes away from him. Now, I will say this. I'll meet you here. If Bo-Katan had her own series, if this jumps off a series, I'd watch it. Because I like Mandalorians. And like I said, in her own universe, outside of his sphere, she's not a bad character. It's just her treatment toward him. When you have an honorable character run into a dishonorable character, you're going to cause me to disfavor your dishonorable character, especially because she doesn't really have charisma. I mean, she was a badass, but she came off really smug and full of herself. And that's not an appealing, and I'm not saying that's not correct for her, but Quinn doesn't like that type of character. I'm not opposed to those characters that are just kind of like, look at him with his stupid religious beliefs, and I'm going to be the new Mandalorian. I'm just like, be a little more serious.
His armor is so much more badass.
Oh, hell yeah. But these guys kicked a lot of butt, though. I mean, I like how they jump into action. I like the way they take charge. I like these three characters.
Like you said, I wouldn't mind having a story behind them that's not
tied to here. Them doing things their own way, a little grittier, dirtier, less honorable, a little scummier. Like, if they had their own series, it could be a little scummier. It'd work. But when you put it in here with this hardcore, follower, she doesn't look good next to the Mandalorian. It doesn't go well together. It was a clash for me.
Well, I think a lot of this also is just showing the evolution of the character as we saw from some season 1 to season 2, to where it's no longer, I'm out for myself. He's actually caring for the child. He is doing things for others without compensation, so to speak. I mean, he's still getting information that he wants. But I mean, the information he's getting versus the amount of danger he's placing himself into, going after an Imperial transport ship with a whole squadron of stormtroopers, that's worth more than the information that she's giving him. And so
he's getting screwed on all these deals, dude. He is getting screwed on these deals.
Now, towards the end of this episode, we had to call back to the guy from the previous season and this weapon. What's this all about?
I only by conjecture, just because I've been around, it's clear that sword is apparently a symbol or tool of the Mandalore, the title the Mandalore, because she needs it apparently to become the Mandalore. She basically implies that directly. So where we originally wondered if this had something to do with lightsabers, no, apparently this has got something to do with the Mandalore, which is probably a weapon that was created to fight Jedi. Because, I mean, think about what it is. It's probably the Mandalorian's take on the lightsaber.
So what he's talking about is the Dark Saber. So the Dark Saber is the weapon that we saw Moff Gideon basically cut his way out of the TIE fighter on Chapter 8. So the Dark Saber was actually created by Tari Vizsla, who was the first Mandalorian that was actually part of the Jedi Council. So he actually was a Jedi centuries, or I can't remember how long ago, but it was during the Old Republic era. So when he died, the Jedis kept his saber in their artifact room, in their temple. And during the Clone Wars TV series, Pre-Vizsla basically broke in and stole the Dark Saber. And that actually became the symbol of basically whoever holds this is Mandalore. So you're right, to where whoever actually owns the Dark Saber is by birthright the leader of the Mandalorians. And that's why she's trying to get it back. Is it's a symbol that the rest of the Mandalorians would technically rally around, so to speak. And how it get from the Vizslas to Kryze to Sabine Wren and House Wren and then Moff Gideon, I don't quite understand that, because with House Wren having the Dark Saber during the Rebels series timeline, that was after the Clone Wars timeline. And now that it got back to Moff Gideon, I'd be kind of curious about, unless part of the Imperial incursion, they were able to basically wipe out House Wren, and that basically became a war trophy for Moff Gideon.
We'll find out, I bet, the way they're going.
Well, yeah, and that's when I expect her to pop back up again, is in her search for the Dark Saber, which for all intents and purposes, behaves like a lightsaber. And how are you going to fight someone with a lightsaber? We'll find out. But that's where I think that possibly whenever he meets with Ahsoka Tano, she may give him a lightsaber to be able to fight Moff Gideon with.
I mean, you can fight. I mean, he doesn't have the Force. I mean, the biggest thing is that a lightsaber is not an absolute weapon in the hands of a non-Jedi. Because the way you parry beams is that they use the Force. People think it's just a lightsaber. No, they're using the Force to predict where the beams are. Like, it's not something that's like Moff Gideon's going to be like, watch me knock all of your beams out of the air.
No, but he's not going to be able to block it with his Beskar armor. So he would need to have something that has the capability of defending himself versus a lightsaber like weapon. Otherwise, yeah, I mean, if you could shoot him from afar, good luck. But
use those screaming eagles. Those things are a clusterfuck of attacks. Use the
whistling birds.
Yeah, he needs to get more whistling birds. Like I like screaming eagles. Screaming eagles is sexier. I'm gonna stick with screaming eagles.
Screaming eagles. That's funny.
Sounds like a rock band.
All right, well, let's wrap this up. I guess final thoughts.
I'm liking a new season. I didn't know it was this lore intense. That's a good thing. But like Blood Axe has confirmed for me that they're actually tying a lot of the series together. As I stated, I don't mind Bo-Katan, but she's a little bit of a questionable character, and I expect her to treat other people like that. I did not think she would treat Mandalorians the way she did, but other than that, I want to see more of her. I actually do, especially maybe a chance for her to kind of clean up that attitude and maybe get a little bit more on my good graces. The Dark Saber, I mean, this is going to be interesting. The weird part is that I don't even know what the focus is anymore. At first, it was all about the child, but now there's other stuff going on that the child's almost not the biggest mystery anymore. Because now you got the Dark Saber, you got a faction of natural-born Mandalorians, and you have Ahsoka Tano, who's still flipping alive. I told you about her recently. You didn't know about her, but I know she was in the cartoon series. I knew she had made it all the way to the Darth Vader era in the other cartoon series, but now she's up again. I'm like, geez, this character is a character that's been around a long time. Plus, how much are they going to go into it? Because for people like Zeno who didn't watch the cartoon, they're going to have no idea who the heck she is. But she's kind of a big deal given that she's Darth Vader's apprentice.
No, people
Anakin Skywalker's apprentice.
Don't even follow the series, and that's what I'm worried about. And they went and got a pretty high profile actor in Rosario Dawson to play the character.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think it's going to be a one-off. And I really think that this is going to be a backdoor pilot for an Ahsoka Tano series, which has been in discussion for a couple of years now.
Brie Larson wanted it. Thank God she didn't get it.
No, but I wished it was the actual girl who actually voiced Ahsoka Tano in the cartoon series. That would have been more continuous as opposed to bringing in Rosario Dawson. But it is what it is. But if done well, then it is something I'll watch. But I'm kind of curious how they're going to portray her, because in Rebels, she basically went Grey Jedi on us, which I thought was really kind of interesting. Will she continue to be down the Grey Jedi path, or will she no longer even claim to be a Jedi at all? Because even in Clone Wars, she said, "I'm not a Jedi." So, did she cut herself off from the Force? Is she more gray? I don't know, but we'll see what happens with it. But I would be excited to see the Ahsoka Tano series, what she's been doing. But going back to something I said on several shows ago, is one of the things that I'm hoping they do is the whole Ezra Bridger, where is he type story, which means they'll bring back my favorite Mandalorian, Sabine Wren, and that would be fun, especially if they did it before this timeline back after following the Rebels, but in live action, including using Rosario Dawson as Ahsoka Tano.
And my last statement is I miss Quinlan Voss. They're going to bring back any other Jedi. Bring back Quinlan Voss. I liked him. He was also one of those more questionable Jedi, which is why I liked him. He was kind of one of those gray area Jedis. And And he was also wisely kept away from he was also put in his own series so that we don't have this problem that we have with Bo-Katan, where it's like he was over here doing kind of questionable stuff while technically being a Jedi, kind of like Kyle Katarn. But they made sure not to mix. Like the one time they put Kyle Katarn next to Luke, I had the same problem. I'm like, don't put Kyle, who's kind of a little scuzzier, next to this, like, really upstanding. You start to see the clash. But I would like to see a Quinlan Vos grittier Jedi series, because that's what his stories were. He was on those far-out planets, and it was a lot, kind of like The Mandalorian. It kind of had that feel, this kind of older, westier, outer rim feel. And this Jedi that's kind of had to do what he's had to do. So I'd like to see that. I would like to see Quinlan Vos. But other than that.
I'm looking forward to the rest of this season. Like I said, I enjoyed the first 3 episodes, and
especially 3.
They're supposedly they're already filming, or they're getting ready to film the 3rd and 4th season together at the same time.
Wow,
they're gonna do side by side filming.
But
for
they
those
do that,
2
they
seasons.
can't adjust to what the reactions are to this one, though. Like that's something I hate about that fast filming is that what if they get in here and everybody hates Ahsoka, and season 3 is all Ahsoka? Like you ought to be a little more reactive. Don't rush it.
Ahsoka would be your own series. I don't think they'll make her a major player because that would take way too much.
That's just the example I was using. But my point being is they can't adjust if they start filming the 3rd and 4th season and there are only 3 episodes into this one. If they go in a bad direction and they should change it, they're going to be in trouble trying to do that if they're like already on the 4th season filming.
But, I agree with Quinlan Vos because he actually did some shady stuff, but he was also on the Outer Rim a whole lot, and I think he probably also survived Order 66 because he didn't have his own squad of clones with him to begin with. But
that's one way.
Do it. My pick for him would be Idris Elba. I would love to see him in.
Idris Elba.
I want to see Idris Elba in almost any role too. Like,
but if you knew Quinlan Vos, this is a good match. This is a good match.
He's a good actor.
Now, if it was a while back before he got older, like if this was about 15 years ago, Michael Jai White. But I'll take Idris Elba too. Like Idris Elba would do it good right now.
I fell in love with Idris Elba whenever he did. He was the captain in Prometheus. I love the way he portrayed that character so much in that movie, and he did a great Heimdall in
He
Thor.
did. I liked him as Heimdall.
Mm-hmm.
All right then. So I think you said that you liked it. I agree. The episode 2 is the weakest episode, but still a good episode. There is no episode that was terrible. I said you could skip it, but I was rating it amongst the 3. Across the whole season, it's a perfectly fine episode.
All right.
Yeah, and it's good. It's not as I enjoyed the season 1 much more, but there was a lot more questions, a lot more surprises. This is okay. Go along and get your information, and then I'm more excited to see where it takes him. Hopefully away from Ahsoka, but I would like to see. Are there other Jedi, or do we actually find that there's a planet where this species is from? And better yet, when he finally accomplishes his goal, what's his motives going forward? So, yeah, I agree. It's good. It's the best Star Wars that we've had in the Kathleen Kennedy era. Much better than the films. Although Rogue One was actually pretty good on the last 30 minutes of it. But I have enjoyed it. I look forward to it every Friday. But I'm a little disappointed that they're starting to bring in all these major players when it was such a small world to begin with. It was they're making it a small world, a small galaxy, because they're bringing in Tatooine multiple times. They're bringing in these characters that we've seen in other properties. So I'd rather them back off that throttle a little bit and give us just good stories about new stuff.
All right. Well, hey guys, thanks for watching. We hope you enjoyed this episode. Be sure to hit that like, subscribe button, all that good stuff, notification bell. You can catch us doing live episodes on Twitch every Sunday. We do a general podcast there where we go over a lot of different topics, as well as some of the Mando stuff as well. We'll keep you up to date there. We try to stay away from spoilers there. Obviously, with this review we couldn't do that. But thanks for watching. We hope you enjoyed, and see you next time.